Key leadership actions during a crisis. When addressing a crisis situation, leaders must take the time to determine who they are leading, the objectives they need to accomplish, and how every action they take will impact the current situation and possibly create new consequences. And just to be clear, all organizations face crises, just at different magnitudes. One person's crisis might be another's bump in the road. The important thing to remember is crisis management is just a special type of problem solving for leaders. Even though there is no one-size-fits-all crisis, each crisis requires a different response. But this presentation focuses on 10 universal steps leaders can use during a crisis. The first step is to gather the facts. But before you start gathering the facts, you need to set the tone by demonstrating and preserving credibility with your internal employees. And remember this idea of credibility when you're talking with external stakeholders like the media and customers later on in the process. Now, when it comes to gathering the facts, you want to survey the damage and gather the information, but make sure that you address your questions to the right people. After gathering the facts, you want to correctly identify the problem. Take ownership and minimize the effects of the crisis just as soon as you can. Don't take too much time to identify the problem because it's not going to get any better with age. The longer you wait, the worse it's going to get. Now, once you've identified that there truly is a problem, you need to sound the alarm to establish a sense of urgency. Once you've sounded the alarm, then it's time to gather the right team members. So this is going to be your crisis management team. And you need to assemble people that you can trust and that have different points of view. They have multiple perspectives. This crisis management team, though, doesn't have to be made up of your senior leadership. You need to elevate people based on their skill set and their knowledge, not just their title. And resist the urge to micromanage the crisis management team so that you have room to lead. You want to focus the team on stabilizing the situation instead of making excuses or pointing fingers. So it's the job of this crisis management team to come up with solutions. And that leads us to the next step, and that is to formulate possible solutions. The goal here is to assess and anticipate before acting. So assess the situation, review the facts, and come up with possible solutions before you do anything. You want to focus on mission critical items. Only focus on what needs to be done to resolve the crisis. Document those options and constantly look 2 moves ahead because you need to anticipate that things will not go as planned. So expect surprises and always be asking yourself, well, if that doesn't work, what else could we do? Or if we do this, what are some possible outcomes? The next step is to communicate with your employees and other internal stakeholders. And that might be, it's like people that are part of a board of directors, basically anyone that is associated with the organization. They should hear the information first and they need to hear it from you because employees look to their leaders for information, assurance, and support. So it's the responsibility of the leader to communicate directly with the employees to successfully weather the crisis and implement change. You need to remember to always communicate truthfully, even if all the details are not known or the situation is bleak. And try not to spin the story because your employees are going to see through that. You need to stay on point and stick to the facts. After letting your employees know what's going on, then it's now time to start communicating outward. You want to communicate with the media and customers. So leaders have the important job of shaping the official narrative. So it's important to plan for media and customer communication. You want to be prepared with possible questions and specific agreed upon answers that have been vetted by the crisis management team. You want to make sure that you squash any rumors and always explain the next steps and remind external stakeholders of the organization's values and deliver on the message that is communicated. And make sure that you provide frequent updates. Don't just make one statement and leave it at that. You need to come back and update as new facts become available. Whether dealing with your internal or external stakeholders, make sure that you always show empathy. You want to deal with the human side of the crisis as a means of showing this empathy and demonstrate concern and compassion. Don't just talk about it. Employees, especially, need to see you during a crisis and they need to see you acting with compassion and concern. It's important that communications with all the stakeholders contain messages of hope. You don't want to be all doom and gloom. And employees need to feel that their leader cares about them and is committed to providing support. Once the crisis management process is kicked off, it's important to maintain critical business operations. So, when dealing with a crisis, the organization cannot forget about providing products and services to their customers, meaning that all work can't come to a stop. You need to make sure what's really important does not get lost during the heat of the crisis, and it's crucial to minimize the impact for customers. Once the crisis has been dealt with and the emergency has been abated, then make sure that you thank your employees. Acknowledge their hard work during the crisis because this gratitude is another way of showing empathy and compassion. Thankfulness is motivating and encouraging for your employees, especially after the crisis. So, of course, organizations should have a crisis management plan. And after a crisis is over, you should examine and adjust the plan based on what actually happened. Identify what went wrong and identify what could have been done differently. After you have identified those areas, you want to make sure that you implement changes into the current processes and procedures and make sure that the employees understand why these changes are taking place because they're going to be the key to the success of any change. Remember, the most important part of a crisis is how quickly that leaders engage the right people and eliminate confusion and return order to the organization. But again, after the crisis is over, plan for change. And change communication and management scholars, they all agree that employee trust is fundamental for the success of the change. And so hopefully throughout the crisis, you have given your employees a reason to trust you. Because without employee trust, it's hard to get everyone to work towards the common goal to support this change initiative.